On News Talk.
The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power. Join the Save Our Shirt movement today. More at saveourshirt.co.uk.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Football Show, Dan McDonnell back in the studio. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Joe.
A few things coming up this evening. We're going to talk to Miguel Delaney. He has written a piece. He wrote it back in May, actually, and it's proving very prescient, where he talked to various sources, really good piece, who all predicted, well, a touch of doom for League One, League Two sides, certainly, maybe even lower championship sides, but certainly League One, League Two. One source in it, the kind of eye-grabbing headline, the big line was that over the next half a decade, 75% of League One, League Two clubs would be facing no future.
Yeah, I think the definition of no future maybe what might have been left open a small bit. And I will ask Miguel about this, but like it is actually unbelievable the losses that are run up in the levels below the Premier League. Some figures come out recently. Even the season that Wolves went up, and they stormed the championship, with the players they brought in. Like their net losses that year were something like 52 million, and that's like the best team in the division. But it basically, there was like graphs to show all three leagues the money that is being lost. And when you don't have the comfort of a big TV deal or whatever it might be, you do rely on stuff like attendances, and you rely on stuff like old school sponsorships. And if the game is becoming so dominated by the clubs at the top, there's a drip down effect in terms of clubs sort of overstretching themselves to try and get there and to climb up the ladder, and then just, because they're lower profile entities, not being able to, generate the revenue to make things work. But also as well, I mean, there's no doubt that bad owners and people play a part in some of the things that actually happen.
Yeah, and look, it's funny, the lads were saying yesterday, well, should we do this piece? And I kind of kept half an eye on it, because it's become a routine thing now for clubs in lower reaches to have staff and players with unpaid wages, and I kind of thought, well, like, it's just, I didn't actually fully appreciate the seriousness of it. I was kind of shocked when I thought, okay, this is actually happening. They're gone. This is it. It's over. They're done.
It's the finality.
Expulsion.
I think people just assume that all these crisis clubs, we've seen them at various times, you assume that they're always going to get out of trouble, and that's not the case. So,
yeah.
This is the problem, and I don't know, like, we'll bring it up with Miguel. Like, I'm not sure how the cycle stops. Like, how do you stop this almost this march towards who knows what, this sort of Armageddon where the wealth inequality is so big between the top of English football and the bottom, with the bottom being the majority of it. Like, I don't know what you do to reverse it, to address it, to stop it. You probably can't. There's market forces at play that are worth a lot of money to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so this is the future.
Well, you're not going to generate a television deal any bigger than they have at the moment. Like, there's a £600 million deal across 72 clubs.
I mean, there are places in the world that would like, more than zero, which is what you get here, to be fair. So
now, unfortunately, the Premier League is a £5 billion. As opposed to £5 billion pound deal, and it's even over a lesser time span, and it's stretched amongst 20 clubs as opposed to 72. But that's just a complete freak of nature. It's kind of hard to get your head around. So it would seem that the EFL clubs are maxing it in terms of TV deal. So actually, the only way you can turn this around is to get more people to go to games, and then secondly, to get the clubs to cut their cloth. So this culture of wages and spending beyond your means in a dreamy bid to hit the big time has to be pierced and stopped, and they need to get on top of that a lot more. And then that should be doable. And then just getting more people to go to games. I mean, League of Ireland can relate to this conversation. It seems the way it was once ensconced in the culture of towns like Bury for dads to bring sons to matches. If you're going for the absolute cliche, now it's sons and daughters, I'm sure, and mothers going. But that tradition seems to be on the wane, and you got to turn that around somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like, an ownership comes into it. I mean, if you suddenly say the clubs in the bottom two divisions, I know you're not saying that, right, that they should all cut their cloth, but I mean, you look at clubs like Bournemouth, Swansea, a couple of others that are now, or have been, like Burnley, that have been down in the third tier, the fourth tier in some cases, that have got to the Premier League within recent memory. Like Bournemouth a decade ago would have been sort of down in nether regions of League Two. Like the sort of dream is there. Like the league is, Irish clubs are trying to break into Europe, which is a different thing across borders. But within the English league structure, there's always been that opportunity for clubs to move up and down. Like that was the tradition of English football. That was the strength of it. I think in some respects, right, you can tell the story of English football through the FA Cup. That the FA Cup ties that maybe people would have come into our homes in January time, and you maybe might be the only time you might see outside the Premier League, or the First Division in terms of crowds, and they would go down to like the Second Division team as it was at the time, the Third Division, the Fourth Division, but there would be like these full stadiums, these places that were, they still look cool as well. They look like a football environment and culture you want to be in. And I know, like, I've spent a lot of time in England, maybe speaking to Irish players who aren't normally at the top clubs. They haven't been in the time I've really been covering football in England in terms of Irish in England. And you go to places like, and Kev would tell you, Preston and other parts of England where maybe like they wouldn't necessarily be the wealthiest or the best towns in the world. There wouldn't be a huge amount going on, but there's like an electricity about the place on a Saturday when football happens.
Oh, yes,
when Saturday afternoon when football comes to life, and it is the bond that brings things together in the way that like a GAA club would here, or a football club would in some of the towns where it's big.
I mean, a bunch of mates went to Preston Rotherham last year and absolutely came away saying, I can see the attraction of doing that every Saturday, and it's a nice thing to do.
It's embedded.
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. And TV money will never care about that, because TV viewers from afar don't care about that, but you can see what it means to the town. And it's a real pity that people in the area, that attendances are down.
Yeah, and like the thing is, I know obviously, and maybe we might bring it up with Miguel as well, about the concept of like, should money come down from the Premier League to help out the smaller clubs, and it's not business really. It's not a capitalist ideal that you would do something without going all sort of political on it. However, like you look at a club like Man City, Man City were in the third tier not that long ago at all.
Yeah.
And Man City, like the new ownership took them to a level, whereas they were towards the late 90s, sort of 2000s. They were like with Paul Dickov and the likes. They were down in the third division.
Feed the goat, Dan.
So yeah, exactly. So
what's the point there?
Bayern Munich in Germany have actually helped out. Ajax in Holland this year have committed to giving a portion of the European revenue.
Okay.
That the Dutch club, it is dripping down.
Okay.
So, and it's a debate that's been had here about the European money. Could you do something with it? You can't imagine owners really buying into it.
No.
But some kind of centralised fund, some rescue fund, some percentage of something that goes into that. It's not just going into players' wages, but that it's going into some kind of rescue fund for clubs that hit this kind of bother, or for people that are out of pocket.
Yeah.
Like it's not the most ludicrous thing when you see the money, when you see that like this has happened in a year where Harry Maguire has become the world's most expensive defender, for example.
Yeah.
So the English football is sick, really, when you think about it, that the exorbitant transfer revenues are happening while clubs are dying.
Maybe it's emblematic of society generally, to be honest. We'll talk to Miguel in due course. Nate McCarthy's naming his Republic of Ireland squad for the Switzerland game, crucial Switzerland game tomorrow. That's on next Thursday.
Yeah, to be precise, he named a squad in Galway recently, physically there. Tomorrow there's actually an email, which is the real squad of 23, where people are going to be left out. That's done by email tomorrow.
Who are the bigger names in danger of being left out of a 23 then?
Well, the bigger names in danger would be the guys who haven't played.
Go on.
So I would say like someone like Robbie Brady, who's carrying an injury, hasn't played, is not playing for Burnley at the moment tonight. If probably flagged, he probably wouldn't, but he hasn't played at all this season. Someone like James McCarthy played 90 minutes against Colchester last night, but that's his first 90 minutes in a couple of years, so is that enough to get him in the 23? Someone like Shane Long, even, who hasn't played for Southampton this season until last night, when he came off the bench for a few minutes against Fulham, when actually Michael Obafemi was picked ahead of him and scored, and is ahead of him. So
may have picked up an injury, Obafemi?
No, I think it might be cramp, thankfully. But he has a track record of hamstring injuries that would worry you a small bit. So they'd be the ones that would spring to mind, like the higher profile lads who haven't played. Jeff Hendrick is playing at the moment in the League Cup.
What's your starting team at this vantage point for next Thursday? Randolph and goal.
Yeah, it would be Randolph a go. I think the back four will probably be the same. I think McCarthy said as much really at the squad announcement that centre halves, I think Shane Duffy and Richard Keogh have done enough in his mind to keep their places. So I think Seamus Coleman and the Stevens full backs the same. It's into midfield that you have to figure out, is this going to be a game for Glenn Whelan, who's moved to Hearts and has played once or twice but hasn't played that long. Like the game against Georgia where Ireland played well and created chances at home, it was Whelan, Hendrick, Horahan as a 3. And is it likely to be that 3? I'd say it probably is. Although, for a home match, would you be a bit more, I hesitate to use the term, a bit more ambitious, but do you leave out the Whelan option and go with something, go with a number 10 further forward? We shall see.
Switzerland are a very good team.
Yeah, they play 3 at the back, the Swiss, I think. And I don't know, do you match them up? They generally play 3 at the back. I'm not sure if it's religiously played 3 at the back, but that sort of presents a slight dilemma. McCarthy alluded to it. Do you try and match them up? Do you play 2 strikers against that? You have to figure out what's the best way to do it, because ultimately if they play 3 at the back, they're going to be very strong in midfield. Like, they're going to be strong in the midfield area, so you probably do need a midfield 3 that will, hold its shape, I guess. So I can see why that might be the 3, and then the front 3 are like the other 2 and the 5 and the 1, or whatever way you want to put it. I'd say McGoldrick definitely plays through the middle. I'd say McLean probably still plays on the left, and I think the one real talking point position for me would be the right side of midfield / right sided attacker, where I'd say Callum Robinson has probably put himself, like, he's probably ahead of Robbie Brady, who mightn't even be in the squad. Callum O'Dowda has barely played for Bristol City. There's a few other names you can throw in there. Alan Judge, who he really likes and come off the bench and made a difference in Denmark, but he probably might be more of an impact sub. And you can throw around other names, Shawnee Maguire, other attacking players that are around the squad. You give Scott Hogan a positive mention, but I think you're probably looking at that probably core of players. I can't see the likes of, say, Alan Brown or someone who hasn't necessarily started the season in favour of Preston breaking into the midfield. James McCarthy is the one. If McCarthy had started the season as a first team player and he was coming here after 5-6 games, I think he might be ahead of Whelan, but he's not. So that's probably what we're looking at. It's a Sheffield United heavy. I forgot to mention John Egan, but he's not going to. I don't think he's going to upset Keogh and Duffy unless there's injuries.
Yeah. And Daugherty, obviously, on the bench, kicking his heels.
I forgot Daugherty. Yeah, I mean, Daugherty is the other one on the right side that, is it worth another pop at that strategy for a different type of game like this? You can make the case for it.
I'd love to really get Mick to expand on the Daugherty thing. What did he see in Gibraltar that was so egregious about the Daugherty-Coleman partnership? Because McLean and Stevens on the other side also didn't have a good game on the AstroTurf in the wind. And yet he was just so definite afterwards that, no, that Coleman-Daugherty thing doesn't work. Yeah.
I think he might like the idea of a right-sided midfielder who cuts inside, and that allows Coleman to make the runs as the overlapping right full. And if you have Daugherty maybe who might have an instinct, although Wolves actually, and he plays on the right, he often gets in, comes in field and gets in the ball. Yeah. But I think maybe the instinct is that maybe are they trying to make the same type of runs in such a way that they neutralise each other, whereas when Brady's played on the right, he comes in, links up with the midfield players, and then it allows Coleman to get forward.
You couldn't. I don't think anyway you could extract that from the Gibraltar performance, that they're getting each other's way too much. It's funny, we had Stephen Hunt in here.
I think I listened to that. Yeah.
The other week, and he was saying he happened to phone Matt Daugherty.
Oh yeah.
Daugherty was in the car, so there was a speaker in the car. And next thing, Seamus Coleman pipes up, also in the car, unbeknownst to Hunt, because Daugherty and Coleman, this great irony, they get on very well. And Coleman starts kind of messing, saying, "Go on, who's the best right back? Go on, Hunty, say it. Tell us who." Which I thought was really good, and that they have that relationship. So that would even strengthen, I think, the argument that surely these two, rather than like competing against each other and seeing each other as rivals, there'd be a willingness to almost talk through positioning a little bit. And look, when I go here, maybe just give me the option of going outside you. And look, if I do that, can you come back? And, various scenarios, because they're both fairly smart footballers. I don't know, it just seems like...
You can see how that would work, but again, are you in danger of neutralising the attributes that makes one or other of them?
I don't think so, because are there not enough times in a game where, say, you're talking about their strengths going forward? Like, Daugherty might need a breather, right, Coleman, you go on the overlap, and vice versa. I don't know, look... Mick McCarthy knows what he's doing, and he's in a sprint here. He doesn't have many games to play with. If he's made his mind up on it, that's fine. It just is galling sometimes to look at Daugherty on the bench.
Yeah.
Given what we have.
No, I know what you're saying. I mean, I guess, if he wants to press them and put pressure on them, though, I wonder, does he think, if you're playing against a team, say, with wing backs, do you want even a right-sided at home, like a right-sided attacking style player who would play high up and sort of try and engage their wing back a bit. This is the debate. I mean, McCarthy spoke a bit about the Swiss last week at the squad thing. He'll have to speak about it a lot more. He was speaking about how the Swiss like to play the ball out from the back, and naturally, well, how do you approach that? I think you will see them try and press aggressively. So maybe he might go with players who are really comfortable with doing that from the front.
The good news, Dan, elsewhere, is that Stephen Kenny, current under-21 manager, future Republic of Ireland senior manager, has named the under-21 squad. So upcoming European Championship qualifiers against Armenia and Sweden. And the headline news you were saying on the news round really is that a decade of wondering where the next Robbie Keane is coming from. And maybe the answer now is in the under-21 squad, because suddenly we have a number of really, really decent prospects up top. Yeah,
there mightn't be a Robbie Keane in there. In fact, there probably isn't in terms of style, in terms of that type of player. But what there is there's 5 really promising attackers in our 21 squad now. And it's not just sort of honing in on one. It's, Troy Parrott is a standout name. He's the youngest of the 5 who are all under 19, which should be mentioned as well. Troy Parrott at Spurs. He is the standout in terms of reputation. Michael Obafemi, who's already played and scored in the Premier League, and as we mentioned, we scored last night. We have Aaron Connolly, who made his debut for Brighton last night, or first start for Brighton last night, and scored in the League Cup. More of a left-sided attacker, more of a Damien Duff style in terms of how he sort of dribbles and gets around people.
No pressure.
Well, but he was voted the top player, named the top player in the Premier League 2 last year in the entire division, not just Brighton, the entire division. He got Brighton's Young Player of the Year without having played for the first team. Then the other 2, Adam Ida, who's 18 from Norwich, who made his first start last night. He's again from the slightly younger age group, more of a number 9 type striker, like Troy Parrott, like more of a 10. And then you have Jonathan Afolabi, who again more of a number 9, who got released by Southampton in the summer, and things didn't look great for him, but he went to the under-19 finals in Armenia, was brilliant, and Celtic have given him a 3-year deal.
The 3-year deal is the significant part there. They think we can turn this guy into something.
He had options as well.
Is it very conceivable all five could really graduate to proper careers in football and be very legitimate options for the Irish team going forward?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the law of averages is that 1 or 2 drop off. I remember around a decade ago there was an Irish underage team. I think it was an Irish under-19 squad. Actually, there was 4 strikers in it that got people really excited. I think the 4 at the time was Anthony Stokes, Billy Clark, Adam Rooney, and Shane Long. Okay. And actually, Long at the time might have been maybe the least polished of the 4, and maybe some people I spoke to might have had him 4th. And actually, Shane Long ended up having the best career of those 4. Stokes, as we know, didn't happen. Rooney did well, just maybe at a level below. And Billy Clark again. They've all had good careers. I mean, the instincts were good in terms of surviving as professional footballers and doing well in the game. But obviously, only Long maybe got to that, and Stokes to a degree got to that level. Yeah, I mean, the progression that they're all on. Of course someone will drop off. That's just the percentage nature of it. Something will happen. But when you have strength and depth and options that you can afford, that maybe it's not just one that carries it all on their shoulders. And I think there's a danger of Troy Parrott having that responsibility, because he's at a top 6 club here, and that's completely it's a decade or so since we've had that. But I mean, there's those 5. There's also some good attacking midfielders in the squad. Nathan Collins at 18, a defender, the youngest Stoke captain of all time. So all of a sudden, and a lot of these lads are homegrown as well. They're not Declan Rice jobs that we're worried about. So I think there has been some good work done that has to be recognised, and we've got some good players coming through. So touch wood that they stay with it. Yeah, and they're working with Stephen Kenny, an added layer to it. Right, we are going to take a very short break. Our football coverage is brought to you with thanks to Paddy Power. For information on responsible gambling, visit dunlewy.net, dunlewey.net. As promised, up next, we are going to talk to Miguel Delaney, who's been writing about the situation at Bury.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power, returning football shirts to the fans. Join the movement today by using #SaveOurShirt.
If you're thinking of buying a residential rental property, ICS Mortgages can provide an excellent range of flexible buy-to-let mortgages, including interest-only terms of up to 15 years. We'll also help you to refinance your existing portfolio and grow your property investments. Call 1890 427 427, visit icsmortgages.ie or contact your local mortgage broker. ICS Mortgages, the property investor's choice. Lending criteria, terms and conditions apply and are subject to change. The entire amount that you have borrowed will still be outstanding at the end of the interest-only period. Dillosk DAC, trading as Dillosk and ICS Mortgages, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
So, the kids are back at school. They've done their homework. It's lush and rain outside. How do you keep them entertained? Easy! With the new extended gaming range at appliancesdelivered.ie. You mightn't know your Minecraft from your Grand Theft Auto, but Appliances Delivered has everything they need. From PlayStations, Nintendos and Xboxes to PC accessories and enough games to keep them quiet till Christmas. Well, a fortnight anyway. Boom! The new extended gaming range, now available at appliancesdelivered.ie.
If you work in a busy commercial kitchen, you'll know the hassle that HACCP paperwork can be. But now there's an affordable online solution developed here in Ireland by KitchenTech. If you're a chef, KitchenTech eliminates outdated paperwork with a designated kitchen tablet. If you're a manager, access your cloud-based HACCP records from your smartphone. And if you're an owner, KitchenTech is very affordable from just €30 per month. For a 30-day trial, visit kitchtech.ie. That's KITCH tech.ie.
Introducing Go Loud, the new app that brings together your favourite radio stations, podcasts and music. Download the Go Loud app for free or listen online at goloudnow.com. Go Loud, podcasts, radio and music to your ears.
Have a great evening with itsforwomen.ie. Don't live your life on hold. Get a quote now at itsforwomen.ie and see why we're trusted by over 130,000 women in Ireland.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now, welcome back. So we're turning back to this story surrounding Bury and Bolton and, well, increasingly lots of clubs, championship level and below. Miguel Delaney of the London Independent is with us. You're there, Miguel. You're in an airport somewhere.
I am. I'm in Nice because I'm on my way. Maybe fittingly, given what I've just been covering for the last day, because I'm going to the complete other contrast now, which is the Champions League draw in Monaco.
Yes.
And, a large factor in why a lot of lower league clubs are where they are.
You wrote a piece about this back in May, which you retweeted. It's a brilliant piece, lots of really interesting comments from various angles and positions in English football. I suppose the headline line from somebody in the piece was that potentially we could be looking at up to 75% of clubs in the bottom two divisions of English football having no real long-term future in their current form. 75% really struggling.
Yeah, that came from someone who's worked on a government level, basically with clubs on a kind of a societal basis in terms of the role of these clubs, which I think is very important to this, the role of these clubs in their local towns and how basically they're one of the few social hubs left, one of the few things that connect in these places, with the decline of the church. You don't want to get into bigger issues. But one of the fears basically was, that essentially there isn't the people or the crowds to sustain the number one reason that these clubs have finance, which is basically, as they put it, bums on seats, and that's a big challenge. And one of the major reasons is essentially just the changing demographics of the game. That, I think I also quote in the piece how the old dad lad culture is going, where basically a current generation, they don't really consume, the kind of young generation now, they don't really consume the game the same way. Technology has influenced that, and obviously, I suppose the absolutely huge focus on the top six in England and the Champions League has influenced this, and where one of the things that some of their studies found, where a lot of young people now only really follow a major club or follow stars, and it just isn't translating into sufficient attendances for a lot of these lower league clubs. I suppose thinking about this, I have done a lot of the past few days as well, given what's happened at Bury and Bolton, and it almost feels like the English lower leagues are actually suffering a similar issue to what Ireland had, or if you want to kind of go around Europe or even the world, I think it's been said about Nigeria as well, even that local leagues are suffering because of the intense interest in this big global great show, which is the Premier League.
Like it is. I mean, I think that's a really accurate sort of comparison to draw, Miguel. I mean, the one thing that struck me, like you go to these sort of smaller lower league towns and the club probably was the lifeblood of the community going back, and that's been diminished maybe over time. But the actual figures and the losses that some of the Football League clubs are racking up is sort of staggering as well, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned the bums on seats, but some of the figures are pretty stark in terms of how these businesses are operating.
Well, yeah, that's probably why it's kind of a double-edged problem. That it's not just about the focus on the top six, which I suppose it's maybe ironic and hypocritical for some of the media to say this, given we're part of the cycle and part of the problem in that regard.
Of course, yeah.
But I suppose the argument is we're serving what people want. But it's not just how the media is drawing people away, the focus on top six is drawing people away. It's also how that the top six in the Premier League is dragging everyone up in terms of finance. I mean, this is something I spoke at length to Mark Palios about this, who used to be a key figure in the Football Association and is now the owner at Tranmere, basically trying to reform Tranmere on almost community lines. And he pointed out the major issue is because the game essentially has structures that are unfit for purpose because they cover too many different strands. It means you have like a Premier League and a top six that is operating in a completely different financial world to so much below it. And this inevitably creates a drag where everyone tries to keep up with the level above them. And that leads to these inevitable gaps and tank traps, as he put it, that all these clubs are falling through. I mean, obviously this comes back then to the idea of that there should be more financial prudence within clubs. There should be more regard for the type of owners that buy clubs. And it's certainly that a lot of clubs aren't blameless, but really it just all adds up to one big problem that the game doesn't seem to really be able to navigate out of at the moment. I mean, one of the conclusions I came to in that piece, that I do think football is headed, particularly in England and I suppose across Europe, it's headed from a kind of an NFL situation where you have this kind of super glamorous, hyper elite top level of the European Super League or whatever we want to call it, and then maybe a much smaller middle tier, and then a huge kind of grassroots movement. Where at the moment, I suppose England has an absolutely massive middle tier, and there are wider arguments that maybe this is unsustainable anyway, because there's 92 professional clubs in a country the size of England. It's actually incomparable anywhere in the world, even Argentina.
Yeah, because I was listening to Dan Rohn last night. He was, one of the many journalists stationed outside Bury Football Club, and he was just even saying, let's just talk TV money for a second, and you've got 5 billion stretched across 20 clubs, 5 billion, and then for over a longer period, you've got 600 million stretched across the other 72. And so the maths just don't work in that way. And you talked as well about attendances and how that's changing. So the Football Supporters Federation takes seriously the theory that a League Two club needs 5,000 through the gate to be sustainable, and a League One team needs about 10,000 through the gate to be sustainable. And you say in your piece in The Independent, if that's the case, then 36 clubs, 18 in both divisions, fell short last season. And if trends continue, then that's not going to improve. So they are going to have to cut their cloth massively, absolutely massively.
Yeah. But this thing, and I think this is one of the issues that was basically suggested throughout all of this at Bury, that the problems obviously didn't start with what is obviously a currently bad owner, and same with Bolton, but almost the structural issues of the club were so ingrained that they're actually impossible to untangle. And it's why, as bleak as it is for Bury and Bolton now, it's almost, this worst case scenario is actually arguably the best solution, because it could inevitably mean that if the fans are invested enough, and we presume they are, they can actually go off and create their own community club, which basically, I suppose, takes the identity of the previous club, but allows it to be built on a much more organic and sustainable grounds, and one that isn't anchored to a system that they're not really equipped for anymore, but one that allows them to kind of build from the ground up in that way. And something like the AFC Wimbledon done, I suppose, is the classic example. But maybe not quite the same level, given I suppose there was actually a lot of glamour about the Wimbledon thing, and they had a lot of financial support, actually, I suppose, because so many were invested in the story about MK Dons and all that. But at least it's an example for these communities to maybe build, and maybe that's possibly the only solution. These ultra local clubs in this hyper global game.
I suppose the other solution, I was going to ask how likely it is, I'm presuming not very, is that the wealthiest clubs, the Super Premier League clubs, some of their money is filtered down through the league, they're compelled one way or another to do so because, as you said at the outset, these clubs are focal points of communities. They are part of the social fabric across the UK, so they are, they are important.
Yeah.
And so there could be some legislative or even altruistic push. I mean, imagine on the top club's behalf, even to filter money down. Again, it seems unlikely for both reasons of greed and then complexity.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's to a degree it's unsustainable. It's not. It's certainly not a robust solution. And also, there's a fundamental problem and dilemma. I think my colleague Josh Robinson has written about this in the club. But basically, if you look at what the Premier League is, this is essentially this is a competition that has been created for the purpose of greed, for the purpose of kind of hoarding more and more money. And even right now, with all this is going on, top six, and particularly Ferran Soriano, Manchester City, they actually want to further alter the distribution so they get more and more money. So the idea that they then send a kind of a portion amount to trickle down just isn't. It cuts against everything about what they are. And almost sums up the problem with that. It is. I shouldn't be laughing at it, but it is almost kind of like a bad joke in that way. The idea that the Premier League and then the altruistic at the same time, where everything about the Premier League, its very definition, its very structure, is designed to make its top clubs more and more wealthy. Really, if not intentionally, but at the expense of everyone else. But it's interesting because even I've heard from a few colleagues that have today written. I think my piece actually didn't really go into whether the Premier League should distribute funds, because I've always considered kind of a bit unrealistic and pie in the sky in that way. But a few colleagues have, or at least touched the idea, and apparently the Premier League press department was very quick to send them figures and resistant to this idea that the Premier League could be anyway a negative, which I suppose again points to the huge marketing operation that it is in itself.
It's probably something that is you're more in touch with over there, but I did watch the BBC News at 10 last night, and this was a top story, and they were live to Dan Rowan. Like, this is incredibly keenly felt and is being talked about in terms of the corrosion of the social fabric of society, and if the kind of projections that are in your piece even half come to fruition over the next 5 to 15 years, there will be books written about the effect this has had on British society.
Yeah, well, I think Tony Evans, who's now columnist of The Independent, has kind of referred to this, that this is it's just a reflection of a wider problem, which is the intense focus of wealth across all aspects of society, basically kind of destroying the fabric of working class culture. I know that sounds quite a little bit pretentious, but I actually agree with it. So much breaking down, and this is what it ultimately comes down to, that these kind of social institutions that were, I suppose, to a degree, kind of built from the Victorian age, just can't really cope in this world that has kind of gone apace in a completely different direction, and a completely global direction.
And it seems to be happening unregulated, is the point as well. And
that's a big issue as well. Yeah, the complete lack, and the complete lack of will for regulation. I mean, and this is why I think there is real blame to go around here in terms of, not just in terms of direct owners, but also the EFL, as much as the Premier League, or more than the Premier League really, because they're the ones that can feasibly do something about this. Yeah.
What could the EFL do? Because I saw various people criticising them when they released their statement last night and talk about it being a terribly dark hour and all the usual PR platitudes you would expect. What could the EFL in theory have done about these situations?
Well, first of all, they've set regulations that have meant Anderson and Dale are actually in Bolton and Bury in the first place. And the very situation is actually remarkable that 8 months on from the takeover, he hasn't been able to prove he has the funds to actually run a team at their level. And what happens then? That team basically goes out of bus because of a lack of funds. So even if that loophole existed and it just hasn't been looked at, is incredible. And there was a lot of stuff in the EFL today about their sorrow for what happened. Yet absolutely no suggestion about any sort of independent investigation about how this came to place. Because that's really what's warranted now. A properly robust look at how these clubs have run. And even if it is arguable that just the nature of modern society, modern Britain, wherever we want to go, really means that clubs, that this number of clubs can be sustainable at this level. it's still something that should be embedded, how it got to this point.
Yeah, well, it ties in with, I mean, the riches at the top, that pointed top. It ties in with CEO culture. It ties in with corporate culture. As you said, it's a societal thing. I saw that the Sports Minister Nigel Adams described Berry's expulsion as a tragedy. Miguel, is there any hope that Boris Johnson's Tory government may intervene here and try and sort out the situation?
I can't imagine that they've got bigger motivations at the moment. I mean, there is one thing actually. A few Labour MPs, like when I was doing the piece, and I did a recent one also on owners as well, and how how this is something else that's fed into the problem. And a few Labour MPs did express interest in kind of trying to bring this up. But given everything else going on at the moment in Britain, it feels like it's a lesser concern. And sadly, there's the issue with clubs like Bury, that it'll be part of the news cycle for a few days, and everyone else will move on, while the community, the heart of it, is left there, and with no football club at the moment, just that empty space, really.
Yeah. Are there many other clubs, like, are whispers going around? Are there others that are potentially heading for something like this very soon?
Well, there's so many in the Northwest. There's also the Coventry situation, Rochdale. I mean, I suppose this, like, the Northwest is of England. I mean, you could write a book on this. Really. I think Simon Hughes has touched on it in one of his books. But I think this is essentially this is the cradle of civilization in a football sense. This is where, if the game wasn't first codified here, it was where there was an explosion of clubs and there's huge interest, where the majority of the clubs came from when the Football League was founded. And now it's come to a point where just almost directly because of that, and because of the size of some of their clubs, because of the way Manchester United, and you could even argue, I suppose, the fact that Manchester City have become so big in the past decade, it's almost cannibalised everything else in the area. So it's so many clubs in that area. I mean, there's almost countless to mention that. But that will face problems,
because that is striking. I mean, I was over in Oldham last year.
Oldham's another, of course,
Oldham are a real problem club. I mean, and you have this image of English football, and I went to their training ground in inverted commas. I mean, it was a shambles. They couldn't even train there some days. They had to train in the pitch. But one thing I'm struck by is, like, I know you live in London, Miguel, but I mean, if you will obviously travel around and see games. I mean, like, is it a case of English society reflects everywhere, where you see kids everywhere wearing the jerseys of the big clubs as opposed to the local clubs as such? I mean, is that something that you mentioned, the cannibalisation? Is that something that's felt across Britain?
Oh yeah, completely. In fact, it's got to the point now where I'm struck where if I notice a lower league. I remember the weekend of the Community Shield final, which is also when the championship, when the Football League starts. And I remember actually I was on my way actually to some football event today, that Jumpers for Goalpost thing, which is kind of like a smaller scale web summit of football that they're trying to build in London. And obviously there was loads of kind of fans going to games, but I think I counted about 5 jerseys of 5 different clubs, but not exactly many wearing them. And even that in itself, the fact that was so conspicuous to me, I think is striking, because really you just see Chelsea, Arsenal, United, Liverpool, and also now increasingly a load of Paris Saint-Germain jerseys, obviously the big 2 in Spain. But so absolutely, you just notice it's so striking now, because you notice when young kids are wearing these jerseys because there's so few of them.
But I think the vast majority of our listeners stab at naming the Real Madrid, Barcelona, possibly Juve, and maybe even PSG as the year goes on, starting 11s, than they would the bottom 3 in the Premier League. There's a pretty good chance. I'd put money on them to go down. I think it'd be the same. I would say myself, even though I work in the job, because I probably, and again, this is reflective, but I probably find myself covering maybe, I've been to the Bernabeu more times in the last 2 years than I have, say, a team that went down, Huddersfield, last season, which sums up the issue. Yeah, you're the problem. You London lefty.
Like we give people what they want, but at the same time, that can perpetuate the interest in the big teams at the expense of everything else.
And I do have a certain sympathy for, like, in terms of regulation, in terms of trying to safeguard against this, the way social media has changed the world, the way just how quickly clubs have become so savvy, the way, like, Manchester United always kind of pride themselves on their digital policy. Like, they've been so good at maximising what the current bandwidth allows them to do. Like, really, you think the only regulation to try and defend against what seems to be happening was like, well, let's not put 3 o'clock games on television, which now just seems so quaint.
Yeah, and I suppose like everything else, social media has intensified that and intensified all the discussion. And also, I think it's fed into this thing where it again just makes the big clubs so much more visible. And a lot of I think it's even had an effect on how football is played, in the sense that obviously the Premier League has become a bit of a closed shop in terms of it's impossible for so many clubs to actually win it or break into the top 6 or whatever. So loads of clubs have basically realised, and a classic case somewhere is Brighton in replacing Chris Hughton with Potter, where they realise if they can't win, they need to sell themselves an identity of something that people can hold on to, of attractive football, and that's the way everyone else is trying to fight this in the face of this huge media onslaught, both in traditional media and social media, of the biggest clubs.
Yeah. Listen, we've taken up enough of your time. People can read that piece that you wrote in May, and it gets more prescient by the day, I think. You retweeted it there recently, so they can check that out on the London Independent website. Enjoy the Champions League draw and the hors d'oeuvres and whatever. You know, I don't know how these things work, but you'll be fine over there.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's the first time to Monaco, actually, so I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's a strange place. You will see people weirdly just like the same fella doing laps in his Lamborghini, and then just tourists taking pictures of him. That's kind of just the vibe. It's a weird place.
I can imagine. I'm almost looking forward to the trip down from Nice Airport more, but it'll be curious.
Oh yeah, the train. Are you on the train?
Yeah. I think that's just to be decided now.
Oh yeah, the train ride. The train is amazing. You go in and out along the coast. That's nice. I'm just giving you some tips.
Okay,
yeah. I'd recommend the train. Listen, thanks so much. I know you're in the airport, so we do appreciate it. Thanks, Miguel.
All right, cheers, lads.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Miguel Delaney there from the London Independent.
Off the ball on News Talk.
I hear you some wiring needs a fixing, ma'am. The name's Buzz, on account of my work.
No chance.
Not all cowboys ride horses. All safe electric registered electrical contractors must give you a certificate of completion that shows their work meets approved standards. Find one nearby on safeelectric.ie.
At Harvey Norman, we've got the latest technology for heading off to college. Get the Acer Aspire 1 laptop with its stylish design and powerful Intel Pentium processor. Now only $329, save €70. Or buy any laptop over $699 and we'll give you up to €300 cashback. Harvey Norman has the largest range and it's all in stock today. So call in-store or shop online today and grab yourself an unbelievable deal for off to college. Harvey Norman. Why shop anywhere else?
Keep an eye on your future with a fully funded degree in industrial engineering at Griffith College. Fit, flex, future. Apply now at griffith.ie. Springboard Plus is co-funded by the Government of Ireland and the European Social Fund as part of the ESF Programme for Employability, Inclusion and Learning 2014 to 2020.
The Off the Ball Open tees off in Abu Dhabi this November 17th to 23rd. Join us with return flights from Dublin, 5 nights in a 4-star hotel, golf on 2 championship courses, gala awards dinner, Peter Lorre golf clinic and a live off-the-ball roadshow, all for just €1,750. Kevin Kilban, Kieran Donaghy and Connor Sketches will be there too. The Off the Ball Open, Abu Dhabi, this November. Limited number of early bird places remain, so book now at CassidyTravel.ie. Deposit of €250 required. Terms and conditions apply.
Off the ball. This is News Talk.
Now then, welcome back. So we're pretty much getting done for this evening. Miguel Delaney there, only adding to our sense of woe and doom.
Well, I mean, the fact that there is a link there between the fact he's got the Champions League draw and
I'm in Nice
talking about this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I'd say the cost of staging that Champions League draw would be enough to save some of these clubs, you know. If you think about you'll see a ceremony tomorrow, you'll probably have a couple of stars and people flown in and jetted in and so on, and that would...
You wouldn't like to know what the corporate fees are for their appearances?
You wouldn't like to know. No, definitely not. So...
not much cause for optimism, is there?
There really isn't, no. And I mean...
It's just the end of the killing off of that Victorian age Miguel reference.
I know. I touched on it a bit earlier, but there is a sense that, like, do you want football to just be about 14, 16, 18 clubs? Like, that's not what it should be. What attracted us to football in the first place was, what attracted a lot of people to English football even was the crowds, the FA Cup ties, you know, the different venues and places and stuff, and like, it was reflective of the football culture that existed at that point. And yeah, the game has moved to another level now because of that attractiveness and how people seized upon it.
Yeah. But I would be increasingly just typical of the consumer and part of the problem in that I generally will only watch full 90-minute Premier League games if it's at least one top 6 side. I don't watch Championship really, but I don't have time. So it's time. Modern life has changed. I don't watch Championship. I certainly don't watch League One or League Two. My heart sinks when there's an FA Cup weekend at this stage because the tournament has been devalued. I feel like it's a waste of a Premier League weekend. I watch the Champions League, so I'm struggling with
you're the classic case.
Two sides of the same coin here, because Miguel said he figures we're heading for an NFL type scenario, and I thought, my God, that's awful. And only an NFL, only 20 teams, like the NFL. And then I go a step further on. I think, well, that will actually not change my viewing habits or my relationship really with the game at all.
No, it won't change your relationship with the game, but the game will change. But the game will change. I mean, if that happens, is there a Harry Maguire? Is there an Andy Robertson? If there's no hole or no somewhere for them to go, you have to think of how the whole thing changes.
But if Harry Maguire wasn't playing,
would you care? No, I know that. I mean, I would have different football consumption habits to you. And
Messi's going to make it.
He is. No, Messi will get there.
Yeah.
Of course. It's.
I think it's terrible for pros like Harry Maguire coming through. But again, I hate the thought of it. I hate the theory of it. But if I was to actually say, well, how will it actually change my season of consumption?
It wouldn't change your consumption. But I mean, this is the thing. The textbook consumers are, people around the world. It's interesting. It's a problem within England now, but naturally, it's Asia, it's Ireland, it's Scandinavia. They're the mass consumers. That's why the kickoff times are spread around the place, and it's all about them. But what happens then if TV deals shrink? If there's a massive debate. You need foundations below still to prop up the game. As much as you think that the super clubs will survive, and they will, but I think maybe in the last 5-10 years you have something that really worked to a degree. It's just it's getting so bloated now to the point that it's taking casualties. I think Champions League is the same. That once you push it too far, be careful what you wish for. People think PSG playing Real Madrid, the semi-finals, the quarter-finals of the Champions League is amazing. If you have those games for 4, 5, 6, 7 times a year and it dilutes it a bit, maybe it's not as amazing anymore, and it's.
I don't want a European Super League.
But that's what it's going towards.
Oh, 100%.
This is what it brings. I never thought that would happen, but I think so. Where do you stop? Do you just have the other teams there for the sake of tradition that they're cannon fodder? But you see the things are going with Man City and Liverpool's dominance. And you have to drip down. Do you just want to watch them in turkey shoots against teams that can't compete with them? Listen, maybe that's entertaining for people. It probably is.
Well, to a
watch
point.
Salah in full flight or Man City tearing someone apart. It is sort of thrilling.
No, to a point.
But it's problematic.
I don't like how ensconced all that is. That's not good for the Premier League. It's not good that there's basically the top 6 and then the Everton.
But that's a product of that's a product of your viewing habits.
Fair enough point. Is it though? No, I actually think that's a product of.
No, because the Premier League
billionaire owners taking over.
No, well, yeah, but the Premier League clubs have got a bigger share of the overseas TV rights now. The top 6 have a bigger share, effectively. Why is that? Because they're saying, we're bringing in the money. Why is that? Because you're saying, I'd only watch a game if the top 6 are in it.
Yeah, but the bottom clubs are still doing very, very well. The bottom club is pulling in 100 million TV money.
No, they are, but it's grades. It's grades, it's grades within the Premier League, and then there's the grades down to the leagues below.
I think you can't discount ownership in that discussion. I don't think that's just viewing habits. My viewing habits.
No, not you personally. You're not personally responsible, but I'm just saying the market demand to watch the big clubs is why they've managed to negotiate to get more of the pie. So and
when did that kick in?
They looked for that 2 or 3 years ago. I think they went looking for it. So I think we're going to see that.
I feel top 4 and top 6 was fairly ensconced before that deal.
It was, but it's more pronounced over time.
Maybe it will be, but I'm not putting that down to TV. I think this is a last 10 years kind of a thing, basically, give or take. And that's not good, I mean, who's going to finish 7th is not a good conversation. It's, and that's really well entrenched now. So, and the European Super League, I totally agree. Real Madrid PSG loses its value over 4, 5, 6 years of watching that a couple of times a year.
It does, yeah.
So we're definitely we're approaching the pinch point. Like, it could really shoot itself in the foot very soon.
Yeah, but you have to be conscious of that, and people will moan in a couple of weeks' time if, like, Red Star Belgrade, who got the Champions, if they lose 5-0, these group stages, but that's still important that exists, that those teams can get into it, they can access it, because otherwise you end up with the Super League. So we can take a pious stance to a degree now on Bury Bolton. This is sad, it's all great, but then in a couple of weeks' time, with the Champions League groups, there's a couple of thrashings. Just remember, that's trying to preserve something as well, you know. But we'll be back to this topic again.
It seems like it, yeah. Potentially 75% of clubs in the bottom two have the quotas 0 long-term future.
That strikes me as a bit dramatic, I have to say. Like, there's some teams in the bottom two divisions who still pull in pretty good crowds, but if you'd said a while back that Bury could go and Bolton could maybe go, that would have been dismissed as well. So
Bury, the first FA Cup winning team to go, and Bolton obviously would be as well if they went the second. Dan, pretty much it's done for this evening. We're very excited. Tomorrow we're doing a full-on takeover of the OTB schedule. So the Drive for 5 special is going to take place across the OTB network tomorrow, with thanks to Tech 7. Simply tech it and leave it. We are on the air from 7 a.m, OTB AM kicking off. Kevin Kilban, Gordon Darcy, Tomas Quinn, Lee Keegan, Colm Nally. We'll have OTB brunch, 10 a.m, Mortras, with a host of big names. We'll have the Dublin Love-In. 12 o'clock, Stephen Doyle, Phil Egan. The Dublin Love-In. They're just going to have a lot of dubs on, talking about Dublin. It's going to be deadly.
Ballads.
Yeah. Ballads, the ballad hour they're calling it. 1 o'clock, there's a response with the Kerry hour.
It's just going to be people.
Owen Sheehan.
People playing down their prowess.
Yeah.
In a sort of a cute kind of bit of a wink. Yeah.
Mark O'Shea, Darren Canadja, Mikey Sheehy. Mikey Sheehy in studio, that's good. 2 to 4, something a bit different. Myself, Dan, they're working me hard. Paul Rouse will be alongside me. Tommy has it down here as the history culture 2 hours.
Are you going to put? You should bring in some like high-end reading and just spread it across the table here, just to add to it.
We have
some jazz, maybe.
We have Judge Brian McMahon coming into us. Judge from Kerry, to talk about the impact of Gaelic games on Irish culture.
Oh yeah.
2 smart men.
You definitely need a jazz track just playing softly in the background.
4 o'clock. The big crap. Must be crappy. Crappy? Just says big crap. The big crappy football quiz of the year at 4. I think I'm in that as well.
Shouty.
Michael Lester's going to be in at 5 with Johnny Ward.
Clash of cultures there.
That could be nice. And then 6 o'clock, off the ball, proper starts. Nathan Murphy on, Ross Munley, David Brady, Charlie Redmond, and on we go. And then between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m, highlights of the best part of the day.
Oh yeah.
So let's see how much the culture hour makes of that.
That'll make the montage.
Yeah. All right, that's going to be tomorrow. So look, it should be good fun. We figured we'd make a big deal out of the All-Ireland football final. So OTB AM kicks it off at 7. You'll get us on the Go Loud app or offtheball.com. So that's the crack all day here tomorrow. Dan, thanks a mil.
Cheers, Joe.
Tom Dunn on the way.
Give my bull any out of spice. He'll give you move with guilt like your ice. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. It's an ice young man.